Hello fellow fic writers, kudos for clicking on this video. My name is Cora and I'm here to help you write and post your dream fanfiction. One-shots, the snacks and entrees of the fanfiction world. A one-shot is any fic that is posted as a single chapter, typically with the intention of being read in a single sitting. Whether you want a quick bite of fluff, angst, smut, hurt comfort, crack, or whatever flavour you crave, there's a one-shot out there for you. However long they should be, that's up for debate, but we'll cover that soon, right after the Sunday bar notice. There's a lot of writing advice floating around on the internet. Some of it is great, like mine, and some of it is not so great, but none of it works for everyone. That's why I encourage you to think of the advice I offer like toppings in a sundae bar. Look at it, consider it, and decide if it will enhance your metaphorical sundae or not. Just because it works for me doesn't mean it will work for you, and that's okay. Chapter 1. How long is a one-shot? So if a one-shot is posted as a single chapter, it can technically be as long as the character limit on your host website allows. With that being said, I strongly advise against posting something that's 10,000 words or more without dividing it into 2 or more parts. This is because 10k one-shots, or 10k chapters in general, can be difficult to load on mobile, particularly on AO3. Also, most people can't read that in a single sitting, so by the time they come back, the website could reload and they'd lose their spot. If you really want your reader to see your story through to the end, wouldn't you want to prevent something like that from happening? On the other end of the spectrum, there's no limit to how short a one-shot can be, as long as whatever you write constitutes as a story. We even have names for the types of one-shots with specific word counts or structures, such as drabbles and 5+1s. To learn more, check out my other video, Types of Fanfiction by Length. Chapter 2. How one-shots differ from original or standalone short stories. In terms of context, original short stories have much less to lean on, and are thus limited in scope. Characters and situations have to be established within a short word count, and the world building can only go so far. It's why it's much harder to write short stories about a completely invented spec-fic world, which is why speculative fiction short stories rely upon common tropes such as fairy tale settings or humans are space orcs. But one-shots do have pre-existing characters, scenarios, and world building from canon to lean on. Sometimes a one-shot will only make sense if there's 7 seasons of context behind it. Chapter 3. Guidelines for great one-shots. So now that you know what one-shots are all about, let's get into how you can write them. Tip 1. Gather ideas and prompts. So, to write a one-shot, you need an idea. A simple idea that won't take more than a chapter to explore. How do you get such an idea? Lots of different ways. Here are just a few. Page 1. Asking for prompts. If you have a Tumblr blog, you can ask your mutuals and followers for prompts they'd like to see you write. Once you fill the prompt, you can respond with the fic. You can also cross-post on the fanfiction archive of your choice. Just be sure to credit the original prompt giver. Page 2. Prompt lists and generators. On Tumblr, people love to write out lists of prompts for fanfiction, and others like to create bot-run accounts that generate random prompts, which can result in fun ideas that no one else ever thinks of. I actually wrote 2 miraculous ladybug one-shots this way. Don't underestimate the power of terrible AU blogs either, because you never know when you might want to prove that such an idea is not so terrible after all. There are also websites like springhole.net that generate prompts, and you can also search up flash fiction prompts online for more. Page 3. Scroll through headcanon posts. A popular and easy way fans like to flesh out their favourite worlds and characters is through headcanons, which are these little bits of canon that only exist in your head. For example, I imagine that character A's signature hat was a handmade gift from B, so they wear it to always feel close to them. That's an easy one shot right there. The moment B gave the hat to A. Page 4. Revisit the source material. Sometimes we spend so much time in fandom that we tend to get lost in the fanon or our own specific niches, to the point where we often forget what the original material is like. That's why when you feel dry of one-shot ideas, or like fanfiction ideas in general, it's always good to revisit canon. Which moments often get overshadowed? Which lines of dialogue don't get quoted to death? Which details often get missed? This is also a great way to find opportunities to write a missing scene. What happened on that journey from point A to B? Did your favourite characters watch the stars together? Did they swap stories from their youth? Page 5. Ask yourself, what if? While revisiting the source material, look at every moment where a character has to make a choice, a particular outcome is narrowly avoided, or any example of cause and effect. What if the villain won? What if your ship didn't sink? What if it did? What if your favourite character didn't die? There are so many possibilities here. Tip 2. Go straight to the point. Readers love one-shots because they're a great way to get a quick taste of something they enjoy. That's why you should deliver on whatever you promised at the first opportunity. Establishing your scenario shouldn't take all that long, nor should the process of exploring it. So quite often, when a fanfic writer thinks of a possible scene idea, they think they have to create a much longer story to contextualize it. If that's your jam, go right ahead. But you can also just write the scene as a one-shot. As AO3 comment of the day says on Tumblr, you can put any necessary context in your summary and go from there. Tip 3. Be creative and experiment. Now, writing rules exist for a reason, but if you already understand them and why they work, you might want to break them from time to time. The great thing about shorter fiction is that it can play with gimmicks that could be great in small doses, but might become tiresome after a while. One of my favourite gimmicks to use in shippy one-shots is to tell it from the perspective of an outsider who has some sort of misunderstanding about the relationship that gets proven wrong by the narrative. I've done this twice for Ren and Nora from Ruby and once for Midna and Link from Twilight Princess. The thing is, if I was to tell an entire romance or love story from the perspective of some third party, we would miss out on the most intimate and important developments between the ship. The longer the story goes on, the less they'd feel like a framing device and the more they'd feel like a hindrance to the story. One-shots are also a great way to try out a tense or POV style that you've never done before. For example, maybe you want to try your hand at present tense or second person. You can also explore a feeling or idea without committing to months or years of work that it takes to write a longer story. All fanfiction is a playground, but for one-shots, this is especially true. Chapter 4. Posting your one-shot. So if you've written and edited your one-shot, it's time to post. I have an in-depth tutorial on how to post a new work on Archive of Our Own, but here are some one-shot specific tips to help you along. Tip 1. Your one-shot is a complete story and therefore a complete experience. That means you should post it as its own fic. So why? For the love of everything, would you post all your disconnected, unrelated, no shared continuity one-shots in the same Fanfiction. Not only will this annoy people who are trying to find longer fics to read, the people actually filtering for one-shots on AO3 aren't going to come across yours. Essentially, you're sabotaging your own hard work by making it harder to find for the people who would love it the most. If you really want to unify your one-shots on AO3, you can create a series. Tip 2. Tag for scene-specific tropes. This is generally a no-go for long fics, but great for one-shots. For example, only one bed is a scene-specific trope, as is duel to the death, I guess. Tip 3. If it doesn't clash with your creative vision, make it screen reader friendly. This means ensuring your fic can be read as smoothly as possible by screen reader technology, which is an accessibility tool for blind fanfic enjoyers. This goes for all fics, but for shorter works, it's especially true, since it's not that much effort to edit the following out of a shorter story. Caps lock, scene breaks that are just strings of letters or characters, strike through text, though this may be essential to your storytelling, phonetically spelling out accents, and so much more. You can learn more in my other video, Can Blind People Enjoy Your Fanfiction? Link is in the description. Chapter 5. What if your one-shot becomes a long fic? Now, this is a common phenomenon, but one that has literally never happened to me before. So while I'm anticipating this question from some of you, I feel like I can't give the best advice here. I can say that I have written at least one-shot that a reader really wanted a continuation of, and I'll explain my reasoning for not doing so. First, I felt like I couldn't take the conflict anywhere meaningful. Maybe an extra chapter or two, but then I'd have a plot that would peter out of tension without coming to the end of its road. I also had that outside perspective gimmick. Had it been allowed to continue on, it would have made the reader feel too far removed from the characters they wanted to read about the most. Even if I dropped the gimmick, I felt like the characters in the ship didn't have any room for compelling growth, since they already did all that in canon. Therefore, the conflict at hand would have merely been external, and the story would have felt shallow. So I bring this all up to help you understand what to consider if you find yourself wanting to write a continuation of a one-shot. Ask yourself, is there enough conflict here to last another chapter or two? If the answer is yes, and your one-shot becomes a two-shot, that's fine. And sometimes a two-shot might become a three-shot, and then a four-shot, and so on. In that context, to keep a cohesive plot, ask yourself, is this new plot point building on the last? Otherwise, you might end up with a story that has no through line or a pretty weak one. Is there a gimmick or framing device that could get old? You could possibly discard it in the continuation, or you could see how far you can take it. It's up to you. Is there room for the characters to have compelling internal conflict that is related to the external conflict? Do they have room to change and grow? Or would they just end the story as the same person they started it as? Static characterization isn't inherently bad, but it's something you would want to do on purpose, because then you can think of other ways to keep your central characters interesting. So those are my tips. I hope they help you write a one-shot that both you and your readers will love. Whether you're looking to write the shortest ficlet or the longest epic, if you're looking for a community where you can feel supported on your fanfiction journey, be sure to join the Write Your Dream Fanfiction Discord server. Here, you can seek feedback, discuss tropes and storycraft, celebrate your achievements, and so much more. Invite link is in the description. And that's the end of the video. Kudos for watching, kudos for liking, and extra kudos if you've subscribed and hit the bell for more dreamy fanfiction tips. I will see you in my next video. But in the meantime, happy fic writing!